My name is Danielle Davis and I read, write, and roller skate in Los Angeles. Welcome to this writer's life where we peek into process. This episode is all about endings. So you can come to the conclusion of a story and write the end so we all know. But of course, one of the tricks about endings is that the reader wants to feel like it's the end, even if they don't see those words, even if they don't know they're at the last line, or even if they don't know they're about to turn the last page, that somehow an ending feels like an ending and feels like a satisfying conclusion to the story that has just unfolded. So I guess the question is how to do that, how to make it feel like the end. There was a famous writer named Flannery O'Connor, and she is rumored to have said that endings of stories should feel surprising yet inevitable. So what I take that to mean is that an ending should be surprising in the sense that you don't totally see it coming, right? It's sort of like, like there's a wonderful surprise element to it. At the same time, somehow it's also inevitable, meaning that it feels like it's the ending that was meant to be, the ending the story is supposed to have, and it flows from the plot's logic and the emotional logic of the story. So I have done some research and also thought about this and come up with 5 types of endings. So my hope is that one of these might be useful to you the next time you're coming to the end of a story and you're thinking about how do I want this to end. Perhaps you can choose from one of these 5. So the first one is the echo ending. I really like the echo ending. This is where the end of the story echoes the beginning of the story in some way. It's kind of like a circle. It speaks to the beginning. So if you think about the opening, you would have something similar at the end, but it would be slightly different. It would be like an echo of it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the character in the opening of the story is baking cookies with their grandparent in the kitchen. So then at the end, you might revisit that idea or that scene in a new way. So maybe they're still baking, but maybe they're baking something different. Or maybe they're baking alone this time. Or maybe they're baking with someone different or in a different place. And basically it would be that they're still the same person and they still bake, but something has shifted and they have changed in some way over the story. So now the way they're baking or who they're baking with or where they're baking or when they're baking is different at the ending than it was at the beginning, but it's still that echo. So that's an echo ending. A second kind of ending is the reader decides ending. In this one, it's sort of left open-ended, not a cliffhanger per se, but open for interpretation so that the reader gets to decide the way specifically they think it ends, based on what they know about the story, the characters, and what they have witnessed so far. So an example of this is, let's say the story is about sports. So maybe it's going to end with a particular really important game. So what you might do is you could end it right before we find out if the character, makes the shot or scores the point, or right before we find out who's going to win the game. The cool thing about a reader decides ending is that it lets the reader have all this power and they get to make this decision about how they think it ends based on what they think about the story. The other thing about a reader decides ending is that it shows that the journey was what was important, not the outcome. It wasn't whether they won the game or not. It was sort of what they learned and how they changed along the way. The third kind of ending is the answer ending. This is the ending where you give the reader the answer to the question they've been waiting to find out about. This is very common in a mystery, though it doesn't have to be a mystery. But let's say you're reading a mystery. The whole point is you're wanting to find out the answer to the puzzle, the mystery, right? You want to know who kidnapped the cat or who started the rumor. Or it might not be a mystery, and it might just be the answer to, let's say, does the character get what they've been after this whole time? Every character has a want or a goal. And so we've been following along to see that journey, and we want to know in the end, did they accomplish that thing? Did they get what they wanted? Did they get to that goal or not? And so that's revealing it in the answer ending. Another kind of ending is the PS ending. So if you write a letter, you might add a PS at the end, right? And that stands for postscript. So that is something that's kind of an add-on that comes after the letter that you want to communicate. And that's what a PS ending is like. Sometimes it's called an epilogue, but it's kind of like an add-on to the story, and it often takes place after the action of the story. And so it's when the narrator or the main character might be adding on. They might be looking back at the action of the story, and maybe they're reflecting on it or summing it up or adding some other information to it. It could even be a letter itself. It could be anything that serves as a postscript, a kind of looking back or adding on to the story after the action is closed. The last kind of ending for our purposes today is the astonishing ending. So this is one, because it's so astonishing, is one that you might want to use more sparingly. So this is basically a twist at the end, a total surprise twist. So it makes the reader feel like everything they've read already has just been turned upside down with the ending. So an example of this is, let's say you're following a main character and you're rooting for them, and then at the very end you find out that they're bad. They're the bad person and you shouldn't have been rooting for them. And it changes the way you see the whole story. The same would be if it's this villain that's been there the whole time, and then at the end you find out the villain is actually good, someone you should have been rooting for. And then you see the story in this totally different, new, astonishing, upside down way. The next time that you come to the end of one of your stories, maybe one of these 5 types of endings will fit the bill and suit the story that you are telling. There's a PDF in the show notes that will help guide you and gives you all 5 endings. Thank you so much for spending this time with me here on This Writer's Life. I hope that you'll subscribe and join me for future episodes. Parents and educators, please check out my website where you can sign up for my newsletter. And that way you'll get new episodes and corresponding PDFs delivered right to your inbox every time.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Torres. I am the author of Steph Soto Taco Queen, Flor and Miranda Steal the Show, and most recently, The Fresh New Face of Griselda. Before I became a children's author, I worked as a newspaper reporter. That means that I wrote about real things that really happened to real people. When you're a reporter, you're not supposed to make anything up, not even a single blade of grass. And of course, when you're writing fiction, your job is much different. You get to make everything up. But a very important lesson that I've learned is that even fictional stories, and I would say the best fictional stories, still have some truth in them. So my books are not about me. They're not true in that sense of the word. But all of them draw on real things that I've experienced or things that I've felt, things that I've wondered about or worried about. And so that's what gives them their truth. That's what gives them their heart. And I've found that I most love writing when I'm writing about things that are true to me. And which brings me to another really important lesson, and one that I hope you learn much sooner than I did. That my memories, my culture, my language, the things I think about and the things I feel are all very important, and they're all important enough to be in books. I didn't always know that. And so I hope that you all learn that your experiences, your thoughts, your traditions and cultures, the things you see around you in your neighborhood, the things you do with your families, the things that are important to you, all of those are a part of your true story, and I hope that I get to read it someday.